Our next guest spent 40 years at the US Treasury Department, where he was known for being a tireless and uncompromising negotiator on the international stage. Before leaving earlier this year, he was the US representative at the International Monetary Fund. He currently serves as US chairman of OMFIF, the financial think tank, of course. Joining us here on set in London, Mark Sobel, US chairman of the OMFIF think tank. Mark, great to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining us. So as you watch now in your new role the trade conversation, how long a time horizon do you think we need to adopt when we're looking at the United States and China, wondering when, if we're going to find an off-ramp in this trade spat? How long a time horizon do we need to implement here?
First of all, I hope I'm seen as a tenacious negotiator, not an uncompromising one. But thank you for having me today.
Apologies. We'll correct that.
In terms of an off-ramp, I think it's very difficult to foresee where this is headed. We're in unprecedented or uncharted waters. I haven't seen any signs of compromise yet. I think that I haven't seen clarity in terms of goals, strategy, and tools in the U.S. So I think the president has legitimate beefs with the Chinese about violations of intellectual property, mistreatment of foreigners, widespread subsidization, Made in China 2025. He had a chance, I think, to form an alliance to try and put global pressure on China, but given the ruptures with Europe, Canada, Mexico, pulling out of TPP, I think he's lost that opportunity. Leaders abroad, even if they agree with him on China, don't trust him. What he's going after in China is very integral to the structure of their economy. It's hard. It's one thing to change tariffs. It's another thing to change the structure of an economy like Keiretsu in Japan. And so what is a realistic win for the President of the United States? I don't have a sense of that. I wish I did. I hope he does.
Okay.
Good morning, Mark. Guy Johnson in Zurich this morning. The Canadians and the Americans culturally, economically kind of fit together, and yet we're struggling to get a deal there. So kind of to the point that you're making, if we can't do a deal with Canada, what are the prospects of a deal with China?
That is a good question. It really depends on the president. I haven't met anybody who's really able to predict his views. I really hope that there's a deal with Canada. There's been progress with Mexico. As you know, in the United States, there's a strong view among many Republicans that there has to be a deal with Canada. Canada's the main trading partner for many states. It's quite a bit of our economic fortunes are intertwined with Canada. And on top of that, legally speaking, there are many debates in the U.S. about whether the president could submit a bilateral Mexico-U.S. deal to Congress, and it would be eligible for what we call fast track or trade promotion authority, which would be a thumbs up, thumbs down vote without any changes. So I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure to get a deal with Canada.
And picking up on what you were saying before, it can be difficult to work out what the strategy is then from the Trump administration, from President Trump in particular. But have we learned anything about his approach to trade, do you think, from watching the US-Mexico deal come to light? And of course, that has yet to maybe or maybe not include Canada, so we haven't reached the end point there. But some have suggested that actually what he is selling as big change is actually just small tweaks, and maybe that's an important learning point, that even if he talks big about big change, that maybe he is actually content on something that does look a little bit like the old NAFTA, even if he says it doesn't.
I think that's right, and whether these small tweaks are good for American consumers, history will judge. I have my personal views on that. He has been a skeptic of internationalism, international institutions, international deals. I regret that. I believe the United States benefited tremendously from the WTO, GATT. But he seems to feel that he has much more leverage in a bilateral context. And there is some logic to that, of course, and obviously when Mexico's dealing with the U.S. or Canada dealing with the U.S., we're the elephant in the room, and it's kind of hard to ignore us. So I think he may feel he has more bilateral leverage to get a better deal in a context like that. But that seems to ignore the broader multilateral dimensions of trade.